Okay, this is day 2 video. This is session 1.3. What we're trying to do here when you join Bookie Bashing, there's a lot going on, and so we thought we'd have 5 days, have a look at a different video every day. You get used to the layout of the site, how things work, things like that. So we looked at, the difference between trackers and tools and Discord and things like that in the first video. Let's have a look at settings here, because at Bookie Bashing, you can configure various things so that maybe you see what you want to see, you have the access to the books that you want to have access to, various things like that, maybe even some data metrics. So I'm going to start with the trackers. The trackers settings, the tool settings, they are slightly different. Sort of peripheral things like, how to configure the site, dark mode, things like that. That'll be in a later video. But just now, we're going to be looking at the trackers settings and the tools settings. So I'm just going to go into trackers just now. And here we have at the top, my settings. You'll see my settings under every single tracker. There are 4 different areas. We've got book settings, we've got data settings, we've got display settings, we've got staking settings. What are these? So the book settings, we want to give you the ability to configure what bookmakers you see, because on the racing tracker just now, you could have a look at every single bookmaker, but odds are on you don't have access to every single bookmaker. So you can configure the bookmakers you see, and I'll show you how to do that. But before then, there's also data settings, so you can play around with different types of data. This is a little bit advanced stuff. You might not want to worry about this right at the beginning, but I want to show you that it exists. You can have some display settings so that you can see what you want to see, and every tracker has staking settings. Let's start with book. I'm just going to add in a group of bookmakers that I'm going to call Tom's Online Bookmakers. And let's say I have access to BWin and maybe BetVictor and Skybet and maybe one more. What should I do? Coral. Now, by creating this group, that means that I can go to the racing tracker and I can filter just by those books if I want to. Let's do one more, because you can have 4 different books. Let's do Tom's Shop Bookmakers. Let's say my local town, I've only got access to Betfred Shop. I'd actually set these up earlier, so here they are. I'll get rid of them, show you again. Betfred and William Hill. I don't have a Coral. I don't have Ladbrokes, so those are the only 2 I want to see. Right, let's head back over to the racing tracker. I'm just going to give it a refresh, because sometimes you need to sort of reload the tracker for it to sort of load in your settings. And here we go. We can show all books, which I'll do now. There's all of the different bookmakers in the track at the same time. But at the top, if I just want to see my online bookmakers, those are the 4 bookmakers I set up. Skybet, Coral, BetVictor, and BWin will just be there. And I can just filter by my shop bookmakers if I want to. So that's how to configure different groups of bookmakers. The groups of bookmakers are very specific to the horse racing tracker. We implemented this because of some feedback that the horse racing tracker users wanted. On the rest of the trackers, it's just sort of online and shop we can set groups for. Down at the bottom, again, we can change our data settings. Maybe day 2, you don't want to worry too much about this, but after you get used to the tracker, you can play around with the lay, last trade, best bookmaker price, just having the BB algo. I would recommend starting off with default, and I would enable the BB algo. And there's some other things you can do. If you want to make a lucky 15, maybe it's useful to show just the highest EV runner from each race. You can filter your win arbs and some things about stopping the tracker updating, and hide runners 10 minutes before the off, because the odds change quite a lot. And you can filter confidence levels. Again, I wouldn't really worry too much about this on day 2. Just know it's there for when you get used to the tracker. Maybe you could have a discussion with people in the forum, things like that, on how they configure theirs. Display settings. So I'm going to untick all of these just now and go back to the racing tracker, and you'll see that we have a very minimal amount of information now. Just really the price, the EV, the race, the things like that. But under my settings, if I want to see more information, I can. So I can turn all of these on, and it will just show me, the neutral odds, things like that. Go back to the racing tracker, you'll see those pop in. As well, in my settings, I've got a minimal style just now, but I could have detailed if I wanted to. So back over to the tracker, and we start to see that the rows get a little bit wider, more information pops in. This can be quite cool on desktop. Personally, I like to have a look at it on mobile, so I will turn it to minimal. On mobile as well, just a bit of advice. It's a lot of information sometimes to fit into a mobile screen, so I like having minimal and most of the columns turned off. Also, a good bit of advice on an iPhone is to set your iPhone browser to look at the page in desktop mode, not in mobile mode, and that sort of stops all of this information from being squashed into the same sort of view. Then we've got some staking settings. So if you want to add your bets, you could have a unit win methodology. Let's say you want to win £100 for each way bet on the racing tracker. Then if you go to this 23-1 horse and go to add bet, £2 and 17p and a half would get you to an overall stake of £4.35, and that would be to win £100. You could add that to my bets and change your staking settings if you want to, if you prefer unit loss or Kelly. There's also a golf staking that we have as well with some configurations for those. So that's the racing tracker. Having a look at the golf tracker. Very similar, not quite exactly the same, but very similar. Under my settings here, I can see my online books and my shop books, some data metric settings. I can filter the win orbs. Again, the display settings, I can turn things on, I can make them detailed or minimal, and my staking settings again, Kelly, unit win and unit loss. Right, similarly, the bet tracker. Everything's now kind of the same under every tracker, so this will be the last one that I do, but you can configure your online and shop books that you want to see, or you could just show all if you don't want to do that. Really, the data settings on the bet tracker is just filtering win orbs and some display settings and some staking methods. So that's, to let you know that you can change the books that you see, and you can configure your data settings and your display settings and your staking settings under my settings on the tracker. What about the tools? Well, if I go to the bet builder, which is the calculator in the tools, just as an example, we see at the top here a ribbon, and in the ribbon there's info, options, optimism. Now, look, I advise watching the videos before you're going to understand anything here, but when we're looking at corners and cards and shots and targets and assists, the places that we bring that information from have an element of uncertainty on where the bias is, and you can set that to between 0 or 100%, or you can have it just set at the default the Bookie Bashing put it in, which is what you can see in front of me just now. So that's found under the ribbon in info, options, and optimism. So yeah, that is just a quick day 2 video that shows you that there are settings available under the trackers and under the tools to configure things like the books that you see, the display settings, the data metrics, and the staking settings, and in the tools, kind of some bias sliders that will sort of play around with the input data that comes into the tools databases. In the next 3 videos, day 3, day 4, day 5, we're going to have a look at instructional videos, a little bit of the hub. That's like an educational area. We'll look at the results and the FAQ section. And finally, in day 5, we'll have a look at latest news.